What's going on, YouTube? I've got a different one for you today. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Oh my goodness, his intro is after the theme. What's going on? Well, we're having a conversation today. Because yesterday, Respawn announced that they're removing Tap-Strafing from Apex Legends in the 10.1 patch coming in a few weeks. Now, I have a whole bunch of thoughts on this, and I wanted to give my 2 cents, but since this is a different form of content, if you like what you're seeing, let me know down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the Tap-Strafing situation. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and share this video with a friend. But without further ado, I'm Brad from Last Call Gaming, and let's tap into it. So yes, Respawn announced yesterday that they're removing the Tap-Strafing mechanic from Apex Legends in patch 10.1, which is the collection event coming in about 14 days. This was a controversial choice to say the least. Within an hour, it was Respawn's most retweeted tweet, probably in their history, I believe. Obviously, everyone from pros to content creators to casual players all had their thoughts on this. As you might imagine, I do as well, so that's why I'm making this video. For those of you that may not know, Tap-Strafing is a tech that exists primarily on mouse and keyboard and is almost completely impossible to do on controller that allows you to change your momentum in midair in-game. This has led to some pretty crazy movement and is almost a staple in high-tier play. It's performed by binding your W key to the upward direction on your scroll wheel. This allows each upward motion to register multiple W presses and gives you the ability to shift your direction on a dime in midair. Now, I've heard a lot of takes that this is a bug and so it needed to be patched out. I want to be clear. Tap-Strafing is not necessarily a bug, it's not necessarily an exploit. Rather, it's just a consequence of how the game is designed. Apex enables PC players to bind multiple keys to one specific action. And so because of that, we were able to discover that you are able to do this. Hence, it's a tech. Where it becomes problematic is that controller players do not have access to this. And so for that reason, Respawn is actually in the right here for choosing to remove it, because if not all players can do it, then it's not exactly fair. But this has been a staple at higher level play, and I think it's a mistake to start removing movement mechanics instead of finding ways to make them possible across the platforms. I think when it comes to movement, particularly with Apex, it's one of the few things that actually separates the game from other first-person shooters on the market currently. The movement is what makes the game fun to play, makes the game fun to watch. I don't like this ideology that we're gonna start pulling the game away from movement mechanics that make the game unique. Tap-Strafing has never really won the fight for you. It's still gun skill, primarily. Tap-Strafing helps you survive, but Tap-Strafing alone doesn't do damage. Tap-Strafing alone doesn't fire your gun for you. The movement gods are not winning the fight because they're Tap-Strafing. They're winning the fight because of their gun skill. The Tap-Strafing just makes it look flashy and can help them survive in some circumstances. Like, it can help you get away and heal, and that's about it. This leads me into the biggest argument against this, which is that if they're gonna take away Tap-Strafing, they should nerf aim assist. And I sort of get it, and to some extent I agree with this, because even prior to the information about this upcoming patch, pros were talking about a hybrid meta where they would play keyboard and mouse for about 2/3 of the match and then swap over to controller for the last third because everything gets up close and personal. And all I have to say is if that is even in the conversation, aim assist is just slightly overtuned. What I think is more likely, this will not break the game in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's only really going to affect the top 3% of players most likely, is that this may usher in a controller meta, just a controller meta period. Because if you start taking away these movement mechanics, there's gonna be no real reason to play mouse and keyboard if you wanna be super competitive at the game. And so what we will see most likely is a lot of pros just starting to make the shift over to controller only. I've heard of several already that are considering it. I myself am never gonna be a pro at this game, and I'm losing the motivation to sort of grind these ranked games anyway because of just how they play and how I like to play the game. And so I very well may never switch to a controller during my time with the game anyway. But I think it's entirely possible that we do see a competitive focus on controller. I don't think that's the best thing, but I do think it's an incredibly complicated topic and it's incredibly hard to balance one way or the other. From the competitive integrity side of things, this game can never fully be balanced. While you have 2 input methods that are so different, one of which is getting some assistance, the other one, it takes hours and hours and hours to have that same level of control. And so the argument then becomes, we'll just play controller. And I don't think that's the right approach either. And I'm gonna use Overwatch as an example. Prior to Overwatch going crossplay, there was this sort of accepted ideology that there were techs that existed on PC with certain characters that you couldn't perform on console with a controller. This of course led to people trying to play mouse and keyboard on console. Didn't work, but people tried it. And you know, people wanted to move towards mouse and keyboard, and that became the goal. To play the game at the highest level, you had to play on mouse and keyboard. Everything else was just sort of an offshoot of it. And catered towards different types of player bases. And that was fine. What's happening now with Apex is that we're leaning heavily towards the controller side of things, where people want to play this game at the highest level, but aren't going to switch over just because they bought a PC. And it's not necessarily problematic. Everybody has what they're comfortable with, but it creates this gray area of how we should balance the game and what approaches we should take. And at a certain point, the scale kind of tips one way or the other no matter what you do. And it's unfortunate because it only sort of deepens the divide between the player base. But ultimately, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a game where the developers have said that they want to focus primarily on the gunplay. That on its own is weird to me because these same developers created Titanfall 2, one of the greatest movement games of all time, but that is another video entirely. But they have made it clear that movement is not the focus in this game, and they like to dial it back so that things are predictable. I believe that this approach is a mistake. I believe it's going to dull the game down to the point where the players that are coming over saying, hey, this is really, really cool, are gonna go, it's starting to become what I left behind. And it's gonna cause problems for them down the road. But these are the decisions that they're making. I still believe that they are in the right for choosing to go with the as even as possible approach, but I really think that there's a better way to go about this than just let's get rid of the movement one by one until there is just nothing technical that anybody can figure out on any sort of input method. It's a slippery slope, is all I'm saying. And so that leads me into what I've seen from the pros and what I've seen from other content creators and just the community as a whole. In regards to the community, I think a lot of people's takes are very bad about this. I see a ton of controller players that are just spamming the get good button, and I think that's just silly because, again, when it comes to input methods, there is no equal ground, okay? There is no way that a cross-platform game can be fully equal when you have two vastly different input methods. It just doesn't exist. Then you have the content creators who are just losing their minds. And to some degree, I understand this as a content creator myself, because not all of the content creators build their platform on being the highest level of gameplay. They build their platform on being able to do cool stuff. And the movement mechanics are fun to watch. If you can have a brand where you're fun and interactive to engage with and also do really cool stunts and things all through Apex, like, you're gonna have a good channel. And this kind of just strips a little bit of that away. Not a lot, but a little bit. And it's enough where you start to get fewer and fewer of those cool clips. And I understand sort of the animosity there. From the pro side of things, I think they're being over dramatic. I've seen a lot of pro takes go, oh, this is gonna kill the game. No, it's not. This was discovered less than like 3 seasons ago. We didn't know how to do it prior to that. And since then, yes, it has become a staple, but the game existed beforehand, the game will exist after. It's gonna make it slightly less exciting, and it's going to impact a couple of legends specifically, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it's not gonna kill the game. These pros are not gonna get dumped on by controller players just because they can't tap strafe. That's not a thing. That is not a thing. These guys have the aim, they have the game sense, they'll figure it out. Pros always do. So those takes are a bit dramatic. A lot of them, I do agree with a lot of the takes that are like, this was not the problem, this was not the problem to solve. I agree with that. I think in terms of the grand scheme of things of the problems with the game, tap strafing was very, very low on the list because it's not broken. It doesn't do damage. I talked about this earlier. Like, it is an inconsequential thing where if someone learned how to juke you, they should be allowed to juke you, and that's about it. But it doesn't kill the guy for you. That being said, the pros have kind of blown this out of all proportion, but they do that with everything. I am personally going to miss tap strafing. I find it so much fun. It is one of my favorite aspects of the game because I came from Titanfall, so any little morsel of movement that I can get, I love. I want more movement. I would love a legend that can do wall running in some capacity. I think that'd be super cool. I may never get my wish, but regardless, that's where I stand on it. As for the consequences to the game as a whole, I think, like I said, it's a very slippery slope. You take this step, do we remove being able to strafe back and forth while in a loot box from mouse and keyboard? Do we limit bunny hopping even further? Like, do we get rid of wall bouncing? I really hope these do not become the case. I really hope they don't look at these and say, let's get rid of them, and this becomes a run and gun. I really don't want that for Apex, and it would probably push me away from the game personally. It will affect, this change will affect several legends. Octane is going to be interesting to play now. He's gonna be a much more subdued legend, unfortunately. I think this would be enough to soft nerf him down to B or even C tier. Probably just B, because the jump pad rotations will still be good, albeit less engaging. Every single legend gets sort of a soft nerf here because everyone could do a tap strafe off of Octane's pad. Pathfinder will see some problems here. Valk will see some problems here. Wraith will see some problems here. Every single movement-based legend is gonna have some little thing taken away from their own personal text. It's gonna cut their skill ceiling down slightly, which is unfortunate because, again, the more time you can spend with these legends, the things that you can do with them, the cool stuff you can do is never a bad thing. But other than that, it's not going to kill the game. It will still be playable. It will still be fun. There will still be things to do. There's still going to be mountains of content that they produce month after month after month. And hopefully they'll come back at this and say, hey, we've added tap strafing. Now everybody can do it, and here's how you do it. And I think that would be a cool way to approach it. But that about wraps it up. Those are my thoughts on this. I think this is the quote unquote right decision, albeit a bad one. And I am gonna miss tap strafing. I would like to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I don't want to hear any of this just get good, just play controller kind of nonsense. That's not helpful to the conversation. I'd like to hear actual conversation go on down below. If you liked this content, if you like these conversational styles, let me know as well. Leave this video a like. Subscribe to the channel. I would be more than happy to do more of these in the future if the opportunity presents itself. If you want to interact with me personally, have this conversation live, I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, right here on YouTube, 9 p.m. Eastern. Play a lot of Apex, have one flex day, have a lot of fun. I like to think I'm pretty funny. And yeah, that's about everything for right now. Thank you guys so very, very much for watching. And until next time, cheers.